Today, we're going to talk about now I need an accountant. My name is Will Rauber, and I am the CFO at Davis CPAs. Um, Prior to that, I was an assistant controller at AIM Leasing locally for quite some time, the last 12 years. So I have a lot of experience in the Youngstown area. I'm a Youngstown State person. Really love to give back to the community and help out all of the people around here starting up their businesses or really adapting to some of the changes that have occurred certainly over the last couple of years. Um, as far as the question, it's always very funny to think about when it finally hits somebody that they need some assistance in the finance or accounting world. Usually when it hits a person's mind, it's a little bit too late. So for us, what we always like to tell people at HT Davis, certainly, and in SCORE in general, is you need a partner from the start. And that's the great thing about SCORE. There's no cost to any of this. We're going to come in here and we're going to help you out with whatever questions you have, and we're going to be able to refer you to not just an accountant, but a lawyer, anybody else who might be able to assist and really get you off the ground. For what we're talking about as far as an accountant goes, when you look at what you're doing, no matter what kind of business you start, typically you have some sort of skill set that allows you to really take advantage of a market force somewhere in the niche market where you have an opportunity to really excel. And maybe accounting or finance isn't your thing. It's important to talk to somebody, whether it's me or just someone with experience in this realm, to understand it's so important from the start. What is your goal in this organization long term? If you are going to start a business that you want to pass down to your children, or you want to start a business that you can sell in 5 or 10 years, really the beginning is such an important piece of the puzzle. Knowing what software platform to use, what type of entity do you want to start? I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to all of these things. And quite often, unfortunately for all of us, it's so difficult to make a change after you've already started. If you've been doing business as an LLC for so long and you want to change to a C corporation or an S corporation or vice versa, it can be very challenging, and you can be stuck in a situation where you've acquired assets and you are at this point where you're ready to sell the business, and it's a slap in the face because you chose the wrong entity type and you're going to have to pay a bunch of taxes. So it's important to give us a call right from the start. And if you're calling during tax season, it's probably not the greatest time to start that. Everybody's busy. Rates are especially high if you're trying to start at the peak time. So it's always something to keep in mind. Certainly, if you're calling in at December 15th, I think is what today is, your time is winding down to really have an opportunity to plan to minimize your tax burden for 2021. So if you have an accountant, really a partner in what you're doing from the start, you're consulting with them the entire time, you're going to be able to sit down in maybe July, starting out to think about how to minimize your tax burden moving forward. There's so many changes that occur from year to year, and during the COVID times, honestly, day to day, with all of the PPP and some of the employee retention tax credits, it's a lot for people who do it every single day, and the administrative burden on somebody who doesn't specialize in finance and accounting it's really almost impossible to quantify the number of adjustments you need to make in a year or a week and a day. So it's very important to talk to us. As far as tax planning goes, there are certain tax rules for depreciation, new equipment, And then again, all of the changes that come down the line, sometimes post the end of the year. So it's one of those items where if you can have somebody on your team making proactive changes, or just giving you a call and saying, hey, here's where you're at as of July or September. What can we do to help you out and make sure that you're in the right place starting up next year, not just for your business, but also how it flows through to you personally on your tax return. It's such a valuable resource to have. Um, we, I like to think of having a solid relationship consulting with your accountant is really the best peace of mind that you can have. There's the volume of information that comes through on a daily basis really pushes you to trust somebody. And that's one big piece of the puzzle that we always stress is you have to trust your accountant, and they have to trust you. There's a mutual benefit in that, because if you're challenging everything that they're trying to help you with, at some point there's going to be some frustration. And I know a good accountant's always going to be out to help you as much as possible while staying within the framework of what the IRS needs, what some of the banks need if you're trying to obtain financing. So certainly a lot of items to think about. And beyond that, we can also help you out with what type of tracking system you want to use. If you're really small, a lot of times you can get by with just using online Mint, or there's so many tools out there that transition from a personal world to a small business that are very helpful. As you grow, you want to switch to a QuickBooks Online is certainly the preference. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained by being able to give multiple users access, and especially accountant access, so that they can go in and check on things as you go throughout the year. And it's going to save time. You don't have to print reports out, different things like that. But once you hit your wagon to a certain software, it can often be times very difficult to make the change, even within the Quicken platforms. So it's definitely an important piece of the puzzle to start from scratch. When you go into the discussion with your accountant, it's also important to be very honest with them with exactly what the expectations are. It's a lot of people don't even know what they need until it's too late. So some of the things we like to ask straight out of the gate, certainly financial statements. How are you going to track your income and your expenses, your net income? How are you going to know what your business is worth on a daily basis? These are things that as a business owner, if you're not thinking about them, you really should start, so that you're able to kind of, I guess, steer the ship into the direction you want long term, and not just focus on the short term of some of these things. So financial statements, how often do you want to see these items? If it's something that's prepared by your accountant, is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Do you need to see it twice a year? Are you a little more advanced and able to run some quick reports on your own? Especially if you're using a QuickBooks Online, there are a lot of tools that you can use quickly that point you in the right direction. Some of these things are not as obvious as you would think. So everybody thinks about, okay, a tax return, okay, my personal tax return. I know I'm going to need to know how my business is doing. Can we survive for 2 months? What's the cash flow? Things like that. But some of these items also creep up on you. So when you pay your vendors, do you need to send them a 1099 in January? Really, that's not something that a business owner typically cares about or spends a lot of time thinking about, because they're focused on what they do best, and that's delivering their product to their client or their customer. And that is the way that we think about it too, is that's what we do best at SCORE, is push you in the right direction and help you ask the right questions to, maybe it's a reference, maybe it's your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law that's helping you out on the accounting side. A lot of times it's just asking the right questions and making sure that there's a open line of communication between the two of you. Um, on the score side, we love to be involved from the very beginning with your business plan. At the end of the day, certainly, some of the tools that we have are very basic but very important. And backing into a break-even point if you are creating a physical product, helping you with a budget, whether it be just a marketing budget or an actual products budget, cost of goods sold, things like that. We have a lot of tools, industry surveys, things that we are able to compare back and forth to help you understand, hey, you're in the right place, or you might not be in the right place, or why am I not making money this year? Um, Typically, businesses don't turn a profit in the first year. You're pretty lucky if you do. So there's a lot of things to think about, and we'd like to be the people that can help you out and relieve some stress off of you from an accounting standpoint, especially. Um, Payroll. At some point, it comes down to who is the best company to pay your employees through. And maybe you have some bank financing, you have to have some additional attestation services. Score can't help you with that. You have to go to an accountant, you have to have them audit your books, you have to have them do a review. It really depends on some of the covenants that are within a loan. You really have to think about how you want to approach that for the long term. There's sales tax. Who does your bookkeeping? The better your bookkeeper, the cheaper it is to file your returns at the end of the year. If everything's in order, there's no cleanup, an accountant doesn't have to go in and make some small adjustments. You're going to see some tangible, monetary benefits to something like that. So oftentimes it's important to have someone looking at these items on a relatively frequent basis, like I said, whether that's monthly or quarterly, because January rolls around, you have a March 15th deadline for your business. If it's an S corp, for instance, you need to get some of these items, or C corp, whatever it might be. You have to get those items out pretty quickly after the end of the year. And if things are a mess, again, you're getting with an accountant during their busiest season and expecting them to have time to really dedicate to you. A lot of them are at their peak, and it's very difficult to find good help. And I'm sure many of you understand that right now in 2021 with the labor shortage that we're all facing, whether it's a restaurant group or accountants, it's very, very difficult. So anything you can do to spread that out throughout the years is an important piece of the puzzle. Sales tax is another consideration. Every state's a little bit different. You don't really know until you dig in and do the research. My previous life as an inside, not public accounting facing person was I spent a lot of time doing sales tax and sales tax research. And as you grow, one of the growing pains is the different localities, different states, sometimes it's counties. I know out in Colorado it can be difficult figuring out what home rule versus the state functions are. It gets to be overwhelming even for somebody who does it every day, because there's a lot going on. When you think about some of the Wayfair rulings, who charges sales tax, when they charge sales tax, each state has a different threshold, different ideas, and really different levels of harshness when you're dealing with some of the auditors that can come down. We find in general that as long as you're making every effort possible to do the right thing, it's a little bit easier. But if you have somebody on staff with you, pushing you in the right direction and trying to help out as much as possible, that goes a long way when those things do pop up as well. So, even back to starting your business is, do you need an employer identification number? There's so many little pieces to that puzzle. Where do you initially register? Is it the Secretary of State? If you have unemployment, do you have to do workers' comp? There's a lot of questions that a first-time business owner might not know, especially when you do have employees on your payroll. So it's very, very interesting, pretty For me, it's fun. I love to see different companies starting up, certain, especially in the Youngstown area. Um, there are plenty of opportunities floating around for new ideas, for new ventures, and love seeing all of the people that I went to school with uh, in the last 20 years get in and do some of these fun entrepreneur type things. So it's very interesting. Ohio's very funny too. They have the commercial activity tax. There's different rules for excise taxes. Um, Nonprofits have a whole different set of rules that they go by. So that's always interesting too. And we do a little bit of everything. So whoever needs some assistance can come to SCORE. And if they're, and we have a lot of good accounting firms in Youngstown too. Um, Mine isn't the only one that is around. So there's certainly plenty of opportunities there. Uh, there are a new trend recently is some remote CFO services. So many companies are too small to pay a full-time CFO to come in and really guide their business with some of the outside ideas. Somebody focused on what is the end game of this organization? What's the, how do we want to grow? What's the best way to grow? Oftentimes it's pretty difficult. You just sit down and say, yeah, I want to grow. But it has its own challenges. If you grow too quickly, cash flow gets off, or you don't have the people or the administrative back office items to keep up with your growth, you're destined to fail. So a big thing in the industry now is to allow someone to come in, say 10 hours a week, that can really help guide you and understand your exact industry, people who have been doing it for a long time, almost in a consulting fashion. They can come in and take you to that next level. And that's not a bad idea to have somebody on board from the start. If you have a board of directors or something like that, having a trusted source that you can bounce ideas off of, whether that be SCORE or your accountant or a mentor that you have is very, very important. And a lot of times the relationships that you build through these meetings are relationships that you're going to come back to 10, 15, 20 years from now. Maybe it's your third business and you're doing the same thing. You feel like you got it going pretty well. Things change all the time. So lean on these people, lean on an accountant. They add a lot of value that you might not think about every day, but is very important to where you want to go in the future and how you want to get there. And it really allows you to focus on, like I said, what you do best all the time. Some of the other items you have to think about too is, like I said, when you're starting this business, you have to plan to either acquire or merge with an organization in the future. What's the best way to present a foot forward in your books or within your personnel, within your expenses? How do you want to do that to make yourself look the best for a potential sale in the future? Or how do you analyze a potential competitor that you may want to buy out moving forward? So there's some valuation services that you can utilize there. You can use the relationships to really branch off into a lot of different areas. You think about, in the accounting field, we deal with a ton of bankers all the time. So we know, hey, this banker is able to finance someone in a similar industry that might look just like you, needs, hey, here's the books, here's what they look like, we recommend them. And that goes oftentimes quite a far distance with the bankers to put their mind at ease that you have had a review, or you have an accountant on staff and you have issued financial statements. That could be for your own personal financing of the company. Even when you get into some law type of items that you need a lawyer for, we oftentimes have folks that we work with all the time that specialize in a certain industry or a certain type of law that we can refer you to. And I'll tell you, nobody's perfect. That's for sure. I'll be the first to admit I am absolutely not perfect. But if I don't know the answer, I know so many people that we can get you to that'll get you what you need with, I would say, pretty close to 100% certainty. So it's never bad to get a second opinion on what you're thinking about, but it definitely, if you have a trusted source that you can start with, it certainly helps. Uh, and as you move forward, there's a lot of, I guess they're not very odd, but right now some things are pretty odd with taxes. Certainly, when you get into some of the cryptocurrency and how to track some of those items, what you're doing, even in a business sense, you can have some investments in that world that there's not a ton of guidance from the IRS how you handle that personally and within an organization. Are you accepting any cryptocurrency as payment? How are you getting into some of the industries that are less regulated or new? Certainly, it's very interesting moving forward and exciting. We love doing it. We're excited to help out any way we can. Once you get into some real estate transactions, some like-kind exchange, different situations that raise their sometimes ugly head, you need somebody to bounce these things off of. And like I mentioned before too, if you were working with an accountant during the paycheck protection plan, the PPP, employee retention tax credits, those are things that I know at HT Davis they spend a ton of time on. And it's right. You don't have to read through 500 pages and understand what's going on. So your local accountant can work directly with the banker to get some of this stuff done. And again, SCORE can lead you in the right direction with a lot of these items, but at some point you do need to find somebody that you are going to for pretty much all of your weird questions. Things come up every single day. I know my phone is always ringing off the hook with people that just need a little help, need a push in the right direction. And I think that's probably the most valuable piece of the puzzle there is finding someone you can trust and that you want to have help you out. So really, moving forward from there, you have to typically fill out a sheet of items that you need help with, and then from there, sitting down and doing some consulting through the process with somebody from SCORE who has done this before is going to help very much. They're going to be able to fill in some gaps, maybe ask you some questions to just think about moving forward. Do you have a plan for this, or do you have a plan for that? And if you don't, it's time to really think about some of these things and come up with a game plan on how to address them. And they could be, and it's not just accounting that SCORE is good for on that side of things. There's so much opportunity to bounce ideas off of people who have been doing it for quite a long time, a lot longer than me in most instances. So it's mostly retired executives that have plenty of experience in these areas. And it's not just that, but referrals that they can push you to in the right direction. We have offices across the country that I'm sure have experienced pretty much everything you can think of. And even within our own organization here in Youngstown, there's still a similar situation where it's mostly Youngstown based, but if it happened here, these people have been through it and are willing and ready to help you out. So really it's that communication. At the end of the day, you have to find a group of people that you get along with, that you trust, and they're going to hold your hand or really go along for the ride with you. I can't stress it enough as a partnership as opposed to just I'm paying my accountant. It's really not like that. And that can't be the goal. And the most successful situations often arise when you're in it together and you're on the same team. So I would highly recommend everybody push to reach out to SCORE, and we will certainly answer all the questions that we possibly can. Accounting advice is a weird topic at times. We're, as far as, not public accountants on the score side, but if there's accounting advice that is necessary, we can get you to the right people who can answer the questions. So.